The faint rhythmic click of my mechanical keyboard was usually the only sound I needed in my life, a comforting pulse in the late Sunday afternoon quiet of the Nexus, my Tier 3 data center. I was reviewing the Q3 security audit for Nexus Data Solutions, but my focus kept drifting. It wasn't the data density or the new cooling system occupying my mind. It was the building itself. This facility, tucked away just outside the city's tech corridor, was proof. Proof that Chloe Jensen, the quiet girl who started coding in a garage, had built something real, something valuable, entirely on her own terms. At 32, I was the sole owner of a multi-million-dollar asset, crucial to dozens of clients. It felt like walking through a finished puzzle I'd spent a decade assembling. My phone buzzed, cutting through the silence. It was Laura Hayes, my cousin. I hesitated. Sunday was sacred work time. But when she called a second and then a third time, the chill of dread hit me. Chloe? Thank God. Are you checking the family group chat? Laura's voice was tight, thin with panic. I'd muted that chaotic mess months ago, prioritizing peace over passive-aggressive commentary. No. Why? What's going on? You need to look. Now. Frowning, I opened the chat thread, the one ominously memed Jensen family legacy planning, and my blood ran instantly cold. Photos had flooded the screen, dozens of them, but they weren't vacation snaps. They were photos of my family inside the Nexus, not visiting, not touring, but posing like they owned the place. My mother, Deb Jensen, stood right in the center of the main server floor, arms dramatically outstretched, smiling with the triumphant, possessive glee I knew too well. My brother, Trent, was in the newly leased private cage space, holding a measuring tape up against the wall, a smug, entitled look on his face. My sister, Brooke, was letting her kids run wild in the secure lobby, touching the fire suppression controls. My stomach twisted itself into a series of painful knots as I frantically scrolled down. The final photo showed Deb holding up a champagne flute, the delicate crystal out of place against the industrial gray steel of the lobby. The caption was a body blow. We've successfully divided the company assets, so proud of the Jensen family future. More messages followed, hitting me with the force of brass knuckles. Trent is taking the entire third-floor private cage space, perfect for his new digital media consulting firm. Brooke gets the second-floor colo racks, great for liquidating assets for the kids' tuition. And Paul and I are obviously claiming the main secure floor. Chloe can keep her basement office. She's there all the time anyway. My hand started shaking so violently, I almost dropped the phone. The Nexus, my $2 million data center investment, my 5 years of flawless security records, the 10 years of late nights and skipped vacations it took to build Nexus Data Solutions, they couldn't possibly be serious. They had no legal right. None. The screen blurred as I stabbed the call button for Sam Miller, my operations manager. How did they get past 5 layers of security and biometric scans? The stress in Sam's voice was immediate. Miss Jensen, your mother showed me some Nexus Data Solutions paperwork. She claimed she was a co-founder and had authorization for a family internal audit. I didn't think, given who she is, and... What paperwork, exactly? I interrupted, my voice dangerously flat. The memory instantly surfaced. 8 years ago, when I launched Nexus Data Solutions, a small local bank had required a co-signer on the initial $20,000 line of credit since I was just starting out. Deb had insisted on co-signing. I'd repaid that loan in full within a year, paying extra interest to remove her name and signature from every single notarized document and account. An old LLC filing, ma'am. It listed her as the initial registered agent, Sam admitted, sounding utterly crushed. That document is obsolete, Sam. I bought this facility and the surrounding land 3 years with company profits, years after her involvement ended. She has no authority here. Zero. I began pacing my office, kicking an empty network cable box across the floor. Fragments of recent family small talk clicked into place. pieces of a sinister puzzle. Deb's casual questions about our server rack pricing, Trent asking about facility access badges, Brooke's sudden interest in my quarterly P&Ls. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, premeditated corporate takeover attempt leveraging outdated paperwork and familial trust. My fingers were already dialing Marcus Thorne, my corporate litigator. I grabbed my car keys, the heavy data center keys digging painfully into my palm. Marcus, I need you at the Nexus immediately. My family is attempting a constructive possession. Bring the updated corporate filings, the notarized removal documents, and the facility deeds. Every scrap of paper, now. Next call. Facility security. This is Chloe Jensen. I need a security lockdown team at the facility now. There are unauthorized personnel claiming ownership and attempting to breach server floors. No one leaves until I arrive, and I mean no one. The 10-minute drive from my nearby home to the facility felt like an agonizing eternity. Every red light was another chance for my family to further stake their baseless claim, to potentially damage the delicate, expensive equipment inside. As I pulled into the lot, I saw it. 3 unfamiliar luxury SUVs hogging the visitor spaces. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole extended clan summoned for this grotesque celebration. Deep breath, Chloe. Shoulders back. Walk in like you own the place, because you do. The moment I pushed through the main biometric lobby doors, Deb's voice rang out, sickeningly cheerful. "Oh, there you are, honey. Come join the board meeting." The scene was surreal. A tacky banner reading Jensen Data Estate Distribution stretched across the secure check-in counter. Relatives I barely spoke to were milling about, some holding cheap wine glasses, others taking photos of the facility's highly confidential infrastructure. One person, I recognized him as a low-level accountant acquaintance of my father's, was snapping pictures of the tenant lease documents displayed on the reception screen. My multi-million-dollar investment, my reputation with my Fortune 500 clients, my future acquisitions, all threatened by this bizarre family invasion. What exactly is happening here, Mother? I kept my voice flat, every word iced over, masking the inferno of pure rage burning in my chest. Deb approached, moving as for a hug I was certainly not going to give. "We are planning the family's future, dear. Everyone is getting a fair stake in the Jensen legacy." "The Jensen legacy?" I repeated, the ice cracking. "You mean my company, the one I founded, built, and purchased with my own money and credit." Paul, my father, interjected from behind her, his voice weak. "Now, Chloe, don't be selfish. This is about family unity." Trent swaggered over, a cheap branded notepad tucked under his arm. "The 3rd floor is perfect, sis. We can easily run my new media consulting out of there. Great server density." I spotted Laura standing near the exit, her arms crossed, the relief palpable on her face now that I was here. At least one ally in this madness. Just then, the security airlock hissed open, and Marcus Thorne stepped out, his custom Italian suit and focused demeanor looking powerfully out of place in the industrial lobby. The cavalry had arrived. "Everyone," I announced, forcing my voice to project with cold, absolute authority. Every hushed conversation halted. Heads turned. This little family gathering is over. This facility, and the entirety of Nexus Data Solutions LLC that owns it, is the sole property of Chloe Jensen. Deb's smile didn't falter, turning brittle instead. "Don't be ridiculous, honey. I co-founded Nexus Data Solutions. It's as much mine as yours." "That is factually and legally incorrect, Mrs. Jensen." Marcus stepped forward, opening his leather briefcase with a sharp snap. "I have here the current corporate filings showing Chloe Jensen as the sole 100% owner of Nexus Data Solutions LLC, along with the facility deed for the Nexus showing the company as the sole legal owner of this physical asset." He turned to Deb directly, his voice carrying the authority of a courtroom. "What you are attempting here could be construed as constructive possession and corporate malfeasance. It is not just inappropriate, it is potentially actionable and criminal."
The security team arrived then, 3 uniformed guards filling the doorway, their presence instantly changing the atmosphere. Wine glasses lowered, smirks faded. Deb's face contorted, her voice wobbling with the practiced vulnerability she used to guilt us with. "You're choosing money over family after everything we've done for you?" I met her gaze steadily, my heart hammering a defiant rhythm. "No, Deb, I'm choosing ownership."
The security team began the escort process, calm and professional. Relatives gathered purses and abandoned champagne glasses, their earlier entitlement replaced by stunned, furious disbelief. Trent glared as he passed me, the petty, childish anger he'd carried since we were kids flaring in his eyes. Paul refused to meet my gaze. Deb paused at the lobby door, leaning in close. "This isn't over, Chloe. Family means sharing. You'll regret this." "This was never yours to share," I replied, the finality of the statement hanging heavy in the air. I stood in the suddenly silent, empty lobby long after the last SUV peeled out, staring at the tacky Jensen Data Estate Distribution banner now drooping pathetically from the check-in counter. Laura approached, squeezing my arm gently. "Thank you for calling. They've been planning this, using that old paperwork, for weeks. I couldn't stomach it anymore." Marcus flipped through his notes nearby, his jaw tight. "We need to change the security codes immediately, and I'll prepare cease and desist letters for first thing tomorrow. I'll include a notice of potential litigation for trespass and attempted corporate fraud." I nodded. The cold weight of the keys in my hand reminded me of the battle ahead. This wasn't some impulsive family drama. This was a coordinated, calculated attack against my company's foundation. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was only the beginning. I spent the next 2 days living inside a cage of controlled fury, the echoes of my mother's betrayal louder than the hum of 1,000 servers. My focus was absolute. Lock down the nexus, eliminate any vulnerabilities, and prepare for the legal war I knew was coming. The locksmiths worked through the night, replacing every physical lock and upgrading the outdated biometric scanners with the state-of-the-art retinal recognition and reinforced steel airlocks. Not that physical security could stop the kind of violation my own flesh and blood had just perpetrated. Sam Miller, my operations manager, looked like a ghost, his usual confident stride replaced by a constant, nervous fidgeting. "Miss Jensen, I've prepared a full, time-stamped report on how the incident occurred," he said, handing me a heavy binder, his voice cracking slightly. "I should have verified Deb's claims more thoroughly. There's no excuse." I accepted the folder, but didn't open it immediately. Sam was beating himself up, but I knew the truth. Nobody anticipates their own mother will use 8-year-old paperwork and a performance of victimhood to try and seize a multi-million-dollar corporation. "Walk me through Friday's events again, Sam. Exactly how did she get access?" He swallowed hard. "She arrived Friday afternoon with Trent, showed me copies of the obsolete LLC certificate listing her as the initial registered agent, had an EIN letter listing her as the responsible party, said you were restructuring the Nexus Data Solutions management team and needed to measure rooms for a family office expansion. She had documents, Miss Jensen, and she's your mother. I never thought—" "That's the problem," I cut him off gently, finally opening the binder. None of us thought they'd go this far. Inside, Sam had meticulously documented everything: time-stamped facility entry logs, copies of the forged family meeting agenda Deb had presented, even security camera stills of the whole repulsive charade. The Sunday board meeting wasn't spontaneous. It was the chilling culmination of weeks of reconnaissance and planning. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus Thorne. "Chloe, I've just emailed you the bank statements showing your repayment of that initial $20,000 line of credit from 8 years ago, plus the notarized letter removing her from all Nexus Data Solutions accounts. There is absolutely zero legal thread connecting Deb to your company assets or current operations." I paced, my voice low and tight. "They've been planning this for months, Marcus." This wasn't some impulsive Sunday stunt. They timed this to coincide with the Westlake investors' refinancing negotiations.
They knew any ownership dispute right now could derail the entire deal. The realization hit me like a cold wave. Every single client relying on the Nexus for secure cloud storage was potentially questioning who actually owned their data's housing facility. My staff didn't know who had authority. And if they're asking about the Nexus, they might be asking about your other property holdings too, Marcus finished, his voice grim. I'm contacting the title companies and my associates this morning to preemptively alert them. The scope of the attack was clarifying, with brutal, painful efficiency. This wasn't about one building, one facility. It was about Nexus Data Solutions itself. 10 years of work, hundreds of clients, my entire professional identity. I always knew Deb minimized my achievements, I said quietly, staring out at the parking lot where her SUV had been parked. But this goes beyond taking credit. She's trying to take everything. After the call, a text from Laura Hayes blinked on my screen. They're asking about the Houston colo space. Deb told Uncle Gary she co-owns that property too. The Houston colo, my second acquisition, purchased entirely with profits from the first, with zero family money, zero family input, zero family connection whatsoever. The sheer audacity was stunning. I looked at the new retinal scanner installed on my office door. Physical locks were useless. They had already breached something far more fundamental: trust and reputation. I stared at my phone as a notification chimed, a local business blog alert. Curiosity won. I tapped the screen. Deb Jensen's profile picture smiled back at me, her public status update already collecting dozens of sympathetic comments. Heartbroken that my daughter cut me out of the company we built together. A mother's love shouldn't be repaid with lawyers and security guards. My throat tightened. Trent had uploaded a video from their Sunday dinner invasion, cleverly edited to show them laughing, measuring rooms, painting a picture of an amicable family endeavor that I had violently interrupted. His caption read, "When family forgets who helped them start." The comment section overflowed with support from people I'd never met, condemning me for betraying my own blood. I checked the timestamp on Trent's post, uploaded exactly during my critical investor meeting yesterday. Not coincidence, strategy. 4 missed calls from current clients, 2 emails from potential investors requesting clarification on ownership structure. The local business blog, one I had spent years cultivating a relationship with, had republished snippets of Deb's claims under the headline, "Tech CEO and Mother Feud Over Multi-Million-Dollar Data Empire." This wasn't just an emotional attack. It was a coordinated economic strike against Nexus Data Solutions. "Have you seen what they're posting?" I asked Marcus on the phone, my voice tight. "I was about to call you. This crosses immediately into defamation territory. They're timing these posts to coincide with your financing meetings. They are deliberately sabotaging Nexus Data Solutions." "We have options," Marcus said, his voice measured. "We can send cease and desist letters to the family, the blog, and the social platforms spreading demonstrably false information." "Will that make it worse, draw more attention?" I asked, pacing the length of my server rack array. "The question, Chloe, is whether you want to fight this publicly with facts or hope it fades away, which clearly isn't working." The sight of the blog comments of strangers speculating about my company's future was sickening. I need to address this directly. If we stay silent, their lies become the only story. We fight. Marcus agreed. "I'll start drafting the defamation notices now. Meanwhile, prepare a comprehensive statement. Not an emotional appeal, but a documented correction of their claims. We need those timestamp filings and repayment confirmations ready to go." I spent the afternoon assembling my digital dossier, scanned deposit slips proving the $20,000 repayment with interest, notarized corporate filings explicitly removing Deb 8 years ago, property deeds showing my sole ownership. I crafted a measured, professional statement addressing the claims not as a daughter defending against a mother, but as a CEO correcting misstatements about her company's legal structure. The notices went out the next morning. I watched my screen refresh. The business blog post vanished first, then Trent's video. Deb's post lasted the longest, the martyr act stubbornly resisting removal, but by that afternoon it too was gone. A small grim smile touched my lips. Not victory, not yet, but the satisfaction of watching lies collapse against documented truth. "They've gone quiet for now," I told Marcus, "but this won't be the end."
No, he agreed. But you've established something crucial. You won't be a passive target. The immediate crisis was contained, but the damage had to be repaired. I hired a forensic accountant who quickly certified that every acquisition, including the Nexus, came solely from business profits after Deb's removal. This report circulated privately among key clients and investors. A week later, I accepted an invitation to appear on a popular local tech podcast. The host asked about the challenges of rapid growth. I spoke candidly about business boundaries. Building a company requires clear documentation, I explained, looking directly into the camera, especially when family is involved early on. Every transition should be recorded, every separation formalized. Clarity protects everyone. The message resonated. Investor meetings proceeded without hesitation. Clients renewed their contracts. Sam stopped by my office. "The renewal rate is holding steady," he said, offering a relieved, slight smile. "Documentation beats accusations, Miss Jensen. Anyone who matters can see that." That evening, a text pinged. "Laura, Deb is meeting with a new attorney tomorrow, Richard Hanley." I recognized the name immediately. Hanley specialized in high-stakes family business disputes. This wasn't over. It was escalating to the next, much uglier level. I stood at my office window looking down at the street. The question was stark. Do I wait for their next move, or should I take preemptive action now? Either way, I would never be caught unprepared again. The escalation was exactly what I'd expected, but the sheer audacity of their next move still hit me with brutal force. Knowing Deb was meeting with Richard Hanley, a shark known for leveraging family disputes into corporate settlements, I immediately pivoted from defense to methodical, relentless preparation. The penthouse conference room at the Nexus, which my mother had tried to claim as her new estate, became our command center. I spent 3 days pulling every shred of documentation from archives, excavating evidence of my sole ownership like an archaeologist determined to unearth proof of an undeniable truth. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. It was a hostile takeover attempt dressed in the gauze of familial betrayal. "They're building a case, Marcus," I told my lawyer, Marcus Thorne, who sat across from me surrounded by his fortress of legal binders. "Let's anticipate every possible angle and block it before they even file." The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, casting stark shadows across 10 years of Nexus Data Solutions history laid out on the table. My initial white-hot rage had cooled into something much harder and more focused: cold, clear purpose. "What claims could they reasonably make?" I asked, approaching the situation with the clinical detachment I'd use on a complex network breach. "They'll conveniently forget I repaid that $20,000 with interest and removed her years before the company became successful." Marcus nodded, his pen poised. "And what evidence might they fabricate or weaponize?" I slid an old printed email forward, one I had once written to Deb after she had driven me to a critical startup meeting years ago. It read, "Couldn't have launched Nexus without you." I had meant it as a simple thank you for the ride and the emotional support, but isolated and devoid of context, those words were a grenade. "Context matters," I said grimly, "but they will deliberately ignore it." For hours, Marcus and I worked with surgical precision, cataloging every document that established my ownership timeline. Each page represented another brick in the fortress of facts I was building: the original loan agreement with Deb's signature, the subsequent repayment records, and most critically, the notarized letter of removal from all Nexus Data Solutions accounts, signed by her 8 years ago. "She signed this," I reiterated, "acknowledging full repayment and official removal from the company's financial and legal structure." Marcus started coordinating with my forensic accountant, creating a detailed ownership trace to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that every single asset acquisition, from the Houston Colo to the Nexus facility itself, occurred years after Deb had ceased all involvement. This preparation wasn't confrontational.
It was impenetrable.
My phone buzzed with another text from Laura Hayes. Deb meeting with Richard Hanley tomorrow, 2 p.m. They're getting serious. They're talking to Richard Hanley tomorrow afternoon, I informed Marcus, forcing my voice to remain steady. That's a significant escalation. Hanley doesn't take cases just based on emotion. He sees a path to leverage. Marcus's expression darkened. That means they're preparing for formal legal action. If they file a lawsuit, they could potentially move to freeze business operations during litigation. The threat was immediate and devastating. A freeze could halt the refinancing deal, scare off clients, and effectively paralyze Nexus Data Solutions long before we ever reached a trial. I was no longer fighting merely for my reputation. I was fighting for the life support of my company. If they want a legal battle, I said, collecting the organized stacks of documents, we will be more than prepared. We will bury them under a mountain of facts. 3 weeks into this clandestine battle, my meticulous organization paid off. Marcus had created binders detailing every corporate filing, cross-referencing every property deed, and assembling testimonials from 23 business partners confirming my status as the sole decision-maker. We were building towards a devastating response. This documentation is comprehensive, Chloe, Marcus said, closing a thick corporate history binder. They won't have a single loose thread to pull. The soft but urgent knock on the door came just as we finished. Laura stood in the doorway, her face pale, extending a thick manila envelope. It came, she whispered. I was meeting Deb for lunch when the courier arrived. The return address was unmistakable. Richard Hanley, attorney at law. My fingers felt numb as I slid the documents from the envelope. The heading, stark and brutal, hit me like a physical blow. Deborah Jensen, Trent Jensen, and Brooke Jensen v. Nexus Data Solutions, LLC. My mother, brother, and sister were officially listed as plaintiffs. My company, the defendant. Black and white proof that they had declared legal war. I scanned the complaint, my heart pounding. Implied partnership and ownership interest in the entirety of Nexus Data Solutions, LLC. They weren't just after the Nexus, they were after everything. Marcus quickly reviewed the complaint, his expression grim. They've done their homework, he admitted. Their exhibits look legitimate on the surface. I scanned their evidence list, the original Nexus Data Solutions filing naming Deb as registered agent, the old EIN letter, the bank transfer records showing the $20,000 marked family contribution, and the insidious old email where I'd written, couldn't have launched Nexus without you. Gratitude twisted into proof of ownership. My desk phone rang, an unknown number. Marcus urgently signaled me to put it on speaker. Miss Jensen, this is Judge Reynolds' clerk. We've received an emergency filing from Mr. Hanley regarding Nexus Data Solutions. I caught Marcus's eye, a spike of adrenaline shooting through me. Mr. Hanley has filed for a preliminary injunction to preserve company assets. He argues Nexus Data Solutions is refinancing and transferring property that belongs to all founding members. The air left my lungs as the courier delivered the final, crippling blow. Judge Reynolds has issued a temporary administrative hold on the Nexus data operating account pending review. The hearing is scheduled for next Thursday at 9 a.m. Silence hung heavy between us for 3 heartbeats. You're certain? He finally asked. Completely. The date stamp is clear, legally undeniable. It undermines their entire case for constructive possession. This changes our approach. We can file for immediate dismissal, not just a response. I began pacing, my mind racing through scenarios, weighing options with the crystal clarity of knowing I held the truth. They've made their public move. Now, we make ours. I'll have the team work through the night, Marcus said. We'll have everything ready for morning filing. Good. And Marcus, I want all of it. Every document, every amendment, every wire confirmation. I want Judge Reynolds to see exactly what they're trying to do. I hung up just as another call came through. Laura Hayes. Chloe, I need to tell you something, she said without preamble. I was on a family call tonight. They didn't know I was still connected after everyone else hung up. What happened? I heard Deb talking to Richard Hanley, and I'm quoting exactly, "We just need to pressure her.
She'll settle before trial rather than risk her reputation. My fingers tightened around the phone until they ached. You're sure those were her exact words? Word for word. I took notes, legally obtained. She's not planning to win in court, Chloe. She's counting on you folding under pressure to protect your business deals. Did you record the call? No, but I have the written notes and the text messages afterward where they discussed the pressure strategy. I sent them to Marcus. The final, chilling piece clicked into place. This wasn't just greed or entitlement. This was calculated coercion. Thank you, Laura, for everything. They're wrong, Chloe, about all of it. After we hung up, I called Marcus back. I'm authorizing everything, I told him, my voice steady, devoid of any emotional tremor. File the motion to dismiss. Launch the transparency campaign. All of it. You understand what this means? Marcus asked carefully. Once we do this, there's no settlement option. It's all-out legal warfare. They're family. They stopped being family the moment they tried to take what's mine, I thought. They chose this battlefield. They chose this battlefield, I replied. Now they'll face the consequences. The documentation is bulletproof, Marcus assured me. The certified amendment changes everything. I've already been tried in public, I told him, facing my reflection in the dark glass. The woman staring back wasn't the shocked girl who was betrayed in her own lobby. She was stronger, sharper, ready. Now they'll see the evidence. I hung up, knowing there was no turning back. Tomorrow morning, the motion would be filed. Tomorrow afternoon, the documented truth, what boundaries build, would go public. Let them come. I stepped into the courthouse that Thursday, the heartbeat thrumming in my ears. Reporters clustered outside, camera flashes popping against the stone. Marcus murmured, "Let the evidence speak, no matter what they say." The courtroom doors swung open. Deb sat at the plaintiff's table, clutching a tissue, wearing a pale blue cardigan she reserved for sympathy events. Trent and Brooke sat beside her, looking uncharacteristically subdued. Richard Hanley arranged papers with practiced indifference as we took our seats. Judge Reynolds swept his gaze over the room and announced, "Jensen versus Nexus Data Solutions." Hanley rose first, launching into his performance. "Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about a daughter erasing her mother from a family business they built together." He placed a comforting hand on Deb's shoulder. Mrs. Jensen provided capital, guidance, and her name to establish her daughter's company. She was, by any reasonable definition, a co-founder whose interests have been systematically erased. Deb lifted her head, the tears glistening, clutching the old EIN letter like a holy relic. "I just wanted to help my family," she whispered. The performance was flawless, honed over decades of family manipulation. Marcus rose then, his movements measured against Hanley's theatrical flourishes. "Your Honor, the plaintiff's entire case rests on outdated documents and deliberate misrepresentations." He placed the certified amendment on the projector. The date stamp glowed on the screen. September 18th, filed 2 full years before the Nexus data center was even purchased. This amendment, properly executed and filed with the Secretary of State, removed Deborah Jensen from any ownership role in Nexus Data Solutions. It was signed by all parties, including Mrs. Jensen herself. My mother flinched, recovering quickly. "I didn't understand what I was signing." "Then perhaps you'll understand this," Marcus countered, producing another document. The release of guarantee, acknowledging receipt of the $20,000 plus interest, releasing her from all obligations.
Her signature stood bold against the white paper, undeniable. The plaintiff claims ownership interest in properties acquired by Nexus Data Solutions, including the Nexus, Marcus continued, putting the forensic accountant's timeline on the screen. However, every property in this portfolio was acquired years after Linda Warren was removed from the company. These acquisitions were funded entirely by company profits, with no contribution from the plaintiff. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, studying the timeline with narrowed eyes. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Marcus said, delivering the fatal blow, "we have evidence suggesting this lawsuit is not a good faith effort to resolve a dispute, but rather a deliberate, coercive pressure tactic designed to force a settlement." He presented Laura Hayes's legally obtained notes documenting Deb's statement. "We just need to pressure her. She'll settle."
The words hung in the air, transforming the image of the weeping mother into a calculated predator. Hanley was on his feet instantly, sputtering objections, but the damage was done. Judge Reynolds silenced him with a sharp gesture. The judge studied the documents for what felt like an eternity. He finally looked up. The plaintiff's case is based on documents and claims that are directly contradicted by current, certified, and fully executed legal filings. Furthermore, the evidence of improper motive is compelling. The motion for a preliminary injunction is denied, effective immediately. The administrative hold on the operating account is lifted. The motion to dismiss the entire complaint with prejudice will be taken under advisement. But frankly, Mr. Hanley, I question the legal merit of proceeding further. Burst into sobs, not the quiet, manipulative sobs from the interview, but genuine, ragged wails of defeat. Trent and Brooke looked aghast. Marcus leaned over to me. We won. That's the end of it. Hanley quickly gathered his papers, leaving his clients to their stunned silence. Outside the courthouse, the same reporters who had filmed Deb's tears now clustered around Marcus. The court confirmed today that Chloe Jensen is the sole owner of Nexus Data Solutions, LLC, Marcus announced, standing like an immovable wall. This attempted takeover by her family was based on outdated, irrelevant documents and an intent to coerce. We provided the court with the documented truth, and the court concurred. I left with Marcus, avoiding the press scrum. The final humiliation was theirs, not mine. The next day, Judge Reynolds granted the motion. Case dismissed with prejudice. They could never sue me over this again. In the ensuing weeks, Laura Hayes formally joined Nexus Data Solutions as communications director. She had proven where her loyalty lay, in truth and ethics, not blood. I sat in my office at the Nexus, looking at the city lights. My assistant notified me of a hand-delivered letter. I spotted the cream envelope instantly on my desk, Deb's handwriting. I picked it up, noting the single visible line written on the thin paper. I only wanted to be remembered. I folded it once and locked it in the office safe, unopened. Some letters don't need reading. Some explanations come too late. I turned to my desk where blueprints for Nexus Data Solutions' next major expansion project awaited. The company my family tried to claim continues to grow without them. The documentation they attempted to manipulate now serves as a template for other women establishing their own boundaries. In my office, in my building, in the empire I built.